Hey there, this is Bram Kanstein, and you're listening to Bitcoin for Millennials. Together with my guests on this podcast, I go on a journey to discover how our current financial system works, why it's flawed, and why Bitcoin is the most relevant technology that you should understand and adopt. In this episode, I'm joined by Terence Michael. He's an Emmy-nominated TV and film producer and has produced over 20 movies and 30 TV shows. I saw you did the Spencer movie. I love that one. I think that's really,
yeah.
I think that's
Cool.
really old, but I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Well, you also operate several businesses. You invest in real estate and consult with entrepreneurs on how to cultivate their skills. But also over the last 6 years, you've morphed into a hardcore Bitcoiner and most recently wrote your third book called Proof of Money, the big idea behind Bitcoin and what you don't know about why you need it. I love that title. Welcome, man.
Welcome. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being on. Like I loved your tweet, so I thought I need to reach out to this guy, and then I saw your book, so that's even a better reason. And even your Twitter name is not Terence Michael; it's Proof of Money. Where did that come from?
Well, I've just figured, if I just market it the same as the book, it's going to be so much easier, right? It's like they say to have the same handle across everything, and I don't, but it doesn't need to match my Instagram and all those other things.
Is that also when you started like Twitter when the book came out?
Yeah, I signed up way before like we all did, but it just sat dormant with 6 followers. And then when the book came out, and I was lurking like all of us, just listening and, reading tweets from Saylor and, all of the big accounts. And when the book came out, I said, now it's time for me to engage. Now it's time for me to share and jump on the other side of this and start educating, because I saw sort of where the holes were, where, sort of the technical analysts, people like Greg Foss, the economists like Saifedean, all these people were coming from their approaches, which sort of were in the bucket of professional legacy or traditional finance. But a lot of people have been dabbling with meme stocks and, at the water cooler, and hey, I've got Tesla, I've got Apple, what do you have? Or they want to try to get into real estate. And, so many people are chasing money without knowing why they're chasing money and getting into things, trying to have a second or a third job in areas that they're not experts in. And I thought, well, wait a minute, there's a way that I could write to this and connect why it is they want more money, what it is that their skills are, and how they can stick with their skills, their bucket, and their circle of competence without taking on so much risk. Like, why become a landlord if you don't really know how to work on homes and you don't want to deal with tenants and the toilets and the trash, right? Yeah. And why well, first of all, why get into it's like, so your podcast is for millennials, right? It's like everyone compares, Bitcoin to gold, but it's like, I don't know any millennials that own gold. Maybe
Me neither. No,
yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah.
Maybe there's some in jewelry, or maybe they got some inherited from a grandma or a grandpa, but it's like, I get it. And it makes sense when, the boomers are like, hey, look, you guys all like gold because we've gone through economic times in the past where we need to have a hard money. The governments are inflating. So great. It's digital gold. I get it. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But
It's just the easiest analogy to make, right?
It's the easiest analogy. But another easy analogy that millennials get is the internet. It really is, because Bitcoin is really just code. And where the internet sort of decentralized information, Bitcoin is just decentralizing value. It's providing it to everybody. And that's what the internet does. People forget that the internet hasn't changed since the 1960s. When it started, it was just an academic and military communication system, right? And that's all it still is. It's very slow. It's very clunky. It has not been updated. But because the foundation is so solid, because it's granite and not quicksand, everybody can build on top of it. We can build skyscrapers. We can build businesses. We can build apps. And it's like, when the internet came out, we never thought we'd be streaming movies, right? It was more like, oh, let me read a movie review. Oh, look, here's a picture of a cat, but it takes forever to download. Click, 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 click.
Yeah.
So I like to compare more of that because so many millennials want to invest in stocks, but they aren't reading the PE ratios. They aren't looking at the earnings. They aren't looking at the balance sheets. They're just like, oh, Tesla sounds cool. Let me invest in Tesla.
Yeah.
Well, it's like now you can invest in the entire internet, what the internet was, but the internet was never investable. You had to take risk on all kinds of companies that, just like the ICOs of crypto, back then they were the IPOs on the stock side, so many of those went, like 95% of those just tanked. And unless you could hold on to Amazon for the 7 or 8 years it was under, you were never going to come back up.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I agree.
Even though we know Bitcoin is so much more than money, it represents property and ownership and human rights and the separation from state, and it's a peaceful protest. It stands for so many things, and only solves the energy problems and helps the environment and the climate. We know that, but when you're talking to millennials, and the first place you have to go is NGU. If you can't start with number go up technology, you're never going to get anybody. And it's like if a window
Is that
washer,
about building wealth then, would you say? Like,
yes, exactly.
Is that what you think millennials care about in that sense?
Yes, well, I think, so look, we know that the issue with orange pilling people with Bitcoin is that you can't just describe this superior technology and solution for a problem that they don't think exists, right? You
Yes.
can't knock on someone's door and say, hey, I want to wash your windows, and you, Bram, you're looking through your windows and say, well, I can see through my windows, fine. And I'm like,
There's
no.
light coming through in this.
Yeah, exactly. There's light coming through.
Yeah.
But like inflation, there's little bits of dirt every day, and just enough that your eyes adjust, you get used to it. But suddenly, because it's broken money, it's distorting your time and your energy. Now you're going to have to paint the walls lighter because why is it darker in this room? Now you're adding new lights. Like, I need, but because you just don't know, because it's slow enough, right? It's a slow leak.
And is that also, you think, I talked about this yesterday and I found it an interesting thought, like, is that also then, when you say, oh, are my eyes getting worse? Should I paint my walls? Or like you're starting to doubt yourself, basically.
Exactly.
Where the actual representation of the situation is that there's something out of your control that's influencing the things that are in your control, right? And then, but if you don't realize that is actually happening, you start thinking about, okay, am I doing something wrong? Or am I crazy? Or
that's right.
Just because you simply don't understand, basically.
And that's what inflation is doing, which the millennial generation is feeling more than any generation right now, because it's like the leak has been so slow that we've just accepted it. We've just grown up that, like, when I was a little kid, my grandma would say, oh, I'd get a loaf of bread for 10 cents. And it's like, okay, well, now that loaf of bread is, I don't know, $2, $3 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you just accept that money goes up. But it's like, wait a minute, technology is improving. We're being more productive. We're being more efficient. That loaf of bread should cost less,
yes,
if not at least the same. It should not be going up, right? We learned this from Jeff Booth and The Price of Tomorrow. And, Bitcoin makes our world deflationary. There's no reason for money to go up, but because the governments keep, of course, putting more money into the system.
But under that, right, like I also, like, one of my goals with this podcast is to find, like, what are simpler analogies or what are, like, principles we can discover to kind of, like, trigger people. And I think what you said about technology is interesting, because you would expect that any progress in technology would make, well, even if you say just adjacent products or services, whatever that technology touches, it should become more commoditized or cheaper, the prices should go down, etc. Well, and if you think about the 2000 tech bubble, basically, right? And now everything should be better. But yesterday I saw a chart of British Hodl, who was showing the charts of the S&P 500, NASDAQ, gold, and all these things in dollar amounts. And they all went up. And then he showed them in money supply, so M2 money supply. Everything is down. And the most shocking one I saw was actually the one of the NASDAQ, right? Those are the tech stocks. I think from basic principle, you could argue currently we have better tech than in 2000, right? Like more valuable tech. I think no one would disagree with that. But if you look at the NASDAQ versus the money supply, the tech currently is worth less. which
That's
for
right.
me was just a crazy realization, because arguably it is better. Like, we see it is better. It is
That's
more
right.
valuable, right, than 2000. But just because the money is so broken, it's not valued as it should be. And
Well,
yeah,
yeah, in an analogy that I like to use to say exactly what you just said in different terms is that, look at a $500,000 house and look at it 4 years later, it's $1 million house. Well, unless that house has the utility of it's changed, unless it's growing a bedroom, unless it has just grown more
yeah,
square footage, the
yeah,
utility value is the same. Has so how has it gone up? How's it gone up to $1 million? It just requires more dollars for the same value because
yeah,
that many more dollars are now in the system.
yeah.
And so, of course,
And it's also not the
investors.
case that houses are now more important than before. It's the same,
That's
right?
right.
That's
The
that's what you mean,
utility is
right?
the
Yeah,
same. Right. We're putting a monetary premium, and millennials are some of them are doing this. But it's very hard for many. It's a lot easier for more Gen Xers to do this, and of course Boomers before the Gen Xers, that they're putting monetary premiums on this. So they're driving up the prices without even realizing it because they don't know any better. They earn the money at their job, but they're like, how do I preserve this? I can't hurdle the inflation rate. I'm going to have to chase it with stocks. I can no longer chase it with bonds. Bonds are a losing proposition from day one. So I'm going to have to go into real estate or stocks, and that's where they go. But what they don't realize, like you just talked about with the M2 money supply, yes, in dollar terms, these have gone straight up. But look at the money. The money supply has gone up, in fact, even higher. So it's actually a losing proposition. But it means you have to either be an accredited investor, a qualified investor. You have to be a high net worth individual. You have to have access to all of these vehicles that you can invest in real estate, in artwork, in bridge loans. I mean, a lot of things. My second book, I wrote about this stuff, right? But it was more for accredited investors. Unless you were at a certain level, you didn't have access to the things that the cantillionaires have access to. But now for the first time, we have this egalitarian money that everybody on the planet has access to, and at the cost of no one else. So that's why it's like, if speaking to millennials, I like to approach it from, if you're looking for your own house, that's different. I get that. You want your own house. You want to do what you want to it. You want to have, ownership, if you want to call it ownership. I put that in quotes because it's really just rent rebranded. But I get that. You want your own place. But if you're going out because you want to get Airbnbs and you want to have, second or third houses, and, you think you want to have tenants and you think the rent's going to cover everything, then no, you can save yourself a lot of time and energy, focus on what you do, and buy Bitcoin, because
yeah,
it's the most scarce, and it's increasingly scarce, unlike real estate where more can be made of, more stocks can be issued, more bonds are definitely going to be issued. And people say, well, they're not making any more land. Yeah, but they kind of are, because you can build up and things can burn down and build back up. If we lose access to our Bitcoin, you never get it back. You've just made a great donation to the network, right? So we always say 21 million Bitcoin, but realistically, there's probably 16,500 and going lower, right? Not counting the boating accidents.
And so when you say, buying, quote unquote, or owning a house is just rent reinvented, like,
Yes.
I understand what you're saying, but I also at the same time think you you should have a certain amount of understanding of money and finance, until you understand what you just said.
Sure.
Like, what is the biggest thing you think people need to learn or unlearn in order to, yeah, kind of, I always say, like, open the doors in their mind to explore further, right? Like, I understand that, at least that's how I see it, like millennials
Mm-hmm.
grew up in the best time anyone has ever had, especially in
Yeah.
the Western world, right? Like, I understand
Yep.
my own privilege there, but yeah, like, there was money, there was food, there was running water, like, not like, there was nothing going on basically. But now you are confronted with a world or a financial system that's just works in a certain way, but you have no clue about it. So you have to learn about it. That's what I think. But, like, what do you think is the most important thing people should, yeah, learn, unlearn, or see?
I think in the simplest of terms, it comes down to inflation, but people don't really understand inflation. They think they understand inflation. And so I try to describe it. I like to describe it. I have this model that I use with a pizza. Okay. And I say, look, our entire economy is this pizza, and pretend, Graham, you have one slice of this 10-slice pizza, and I have one slice of this 10-slice pizza, right? So you own 10% of the network. Everything that you've worked for, all your education, the sacrifices that you've made, learning, schooling, everything that you've done, you now have 10% of this entire network because you have one slice and I have one slice. Well, the society that we live in, the government, of course, because they want to pay for their debt, they want to pay for their wars, whatever, taxes are unpopular, they need to inflate. Well, when they inflate, they're not bringing in another pizza. This is the part where people don't get. They're like, oh, we just have more pizza.
It's not more pizza. Yeah, that's
they're reslicing our current pizza because those are all the product. That pizza represents all the products and the services in the economy, right? That's the GDP. So unless the government's
which
adding
has a border somewhere, like
which
an
has a
end,
border, right? There's
right?
a finite amount of goods and services,
Yes.
right? We obviously have to work, proof of work, but the government is proof of stake. So they come in and they reslice this pizza, and now we have 20 slices, right? So now, since they've resliced it, Bram, you only have, remember, 10% of this network. But so now that you have one slice of 20, you've just been reduced to 5% of the network. You have half the amount of calories, half the amount of goods of this pizza, even though you technically have one slice, right? It's still called $1, one slice. And I now have one slice.
I love this. This is great. Yeah. Because
so now,
my own understanding was also more pizza. So this is really good. Yeah.
So now let's say that I make swimming pools, and you and I had a deal where I want you to pay me one slice of pizza for the swimming pool. And so you come to me now with your it's smaller, it's 5%, but it's one
Still
slice.
one
and
slice, yeah.
And I say, well, wait a minute. Me building the swimming pool, I know what I needed to feed my family, and I needed the amount of calories that was the old one slice. So you know what, Bram? I want 2 slices from you. So that's why your swimming pool now is going to cost 2 instead of 1. Because when the government inflates, that's the part people don't get. They're not really pouring more dollars in. They're slicing up the dollars, and so you think there's more dollars. Because the value, the goods and services have remained the same. Now, if the government was actually...
So that is the dilution, that's the debasement, the slicing, right?
Debasement, the slicing.
But asking for more slices is the inflation.
That's right, because they're just coming in and slicing what we currently have. So when they come in to inflate and, let's say they put all that...
I mean, when the pool guy says, now I want 2 slices, that's the inflation, right? Because that's
the inflation.
That is
really
2 instead of 1, yes.
Which is really the amount of your old one, right? Because the government sliced your 10-slice pizza into 20.
Yeah.
So I feel like things like that, there's another, this is a more obvious analogy that I use, and that's that, all of us that work, we're all paid in ice cubes, and ice cubes melt, right? So because we're all paid in ice cubes, we have to quickly get it in the fridge. But our fridge, the problem with our refrigerator is that the government turns the temperature up. So it melts it. We don't melt as much by putting our ice cube in there, but they increase it so it's still melting. With Bitcoin,
so you want to give it to someone else, then, right?
So that's what we have to do with. So we're constantly having to earn more ice cubes. How can I break up this ice cube? Do something with it. Grow the ice cube. Get an ice cube machine, rather than just get a Bitcoin freezer, right? Because if all we're paid in is ice cubes and we can't change that, I put it in the Bitcoin freezer as fast as possible in my own self-custody. I own the key to this fridge. Click. It's not going to melt. And you, who don't put it in a Bitcoin freezer and yours starts melting, mine just becomes more valuable as the world moves to ice cubes.
Yeah. And so if we continue with that analogy, I like it, right? Why does the Bitcoin freezer stay at the one temperature, right? Is that
It's because of its fixed supply, because no more ice cubes can ever be made, and because it's an audible, transparent ledger, and we see. In fact, if we take that analogy, if we extrapolate it further, on the outside of this fridge is a ledger that is showing exactly every 10 minutes how it's securing the ice cubes and how many ice cubes there are. Like right now, today in 2024, we know in 2023, we know there's 900 ice cubes being made a day. And we know that after April 2024, after the halvening, there's going to be 450 ice cubes a day. And so we know it continues to shrink. And people that lose ice cubes, people that are irresponsible with ice cubes, they're never going to get those ice cubes back. The ice cubes don't go away. It's this is maybe splitting hairs, but the way I look at it is all 21 million Bitcoin are there. They were all put there on day one.
Yeah.
We just continue to get access to 900 every day, then 450, et cetera.
And also, I like the freezer analogy. Like the Bitcoin freezer has a glass in it, so you can see what is actually happening. So it's not only the ledger, but you can actually see what is happening all day, every day, 24/7, 365. The government freezer is closed. You cannot see it. That's
right.
Right? And it's never been opened in 100 years or something, right?
And there's effectively 7 to 9 people that guard the freezer, and they can open it up and take ice cubes out for themselves whenever they want and just pour water in and make more. Whereas we have miners all over the world, in every country, on every continent, every sex, race, status, securing this fridge because they're all motivated to keep everyone out of it. So that's the network of people who decided to play by the rules that everyone can see and then decide if they want to play according to the rules, versus a few people who control the government temperature, like the temperature of the government freezer, with rules that could change whenever, right? That's right.
At least today, what is it, September 20th today, people were waiting what Jerome Powell, one of the people of the of the temperature, was going to say about what was going to happen.
And any bad actor who wanted to have a malicious attack, anyone who wanted to run into that freezer and try to steal all those ice cubes, it would cost them more in the amount of water and buckets and glasses and guns and strength than to simply just participate and freeze their ice cubes with us.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of the Byzantine generals problem that, Satoshi solved.
Great. Well, maybe this is a nice analogy. Well, I saw you had one post about this, so I'll link to that. I'll link to that in the description. I like that.
Yeah, I feel like it's helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like you have to simplify before people can dive in further, right? Like I find it also interesting, like I'm pretty active on Twitter, and sometimes I say stuff which also sometimes is just partially like my assumption and how I think it works. And then some people with an economics degree or whatever, today I was talking to a monetary economist, he called himself, and he was like angry at me on Twitter, and I was like, dude, like, it's just so...
This is my observation.
So not chill, right? Right. You can have I can be wrong, you can be wrong. Like, let's just have a conversation, right? But people are like viciously defending also like that what they've learned, and it's just really that's also what I love about Bitcoin. When I talk to Bitcoiners, like everyone has unlearned and learned stuff, right? You do not understand this when you start. I'm 10 years in, I'm still learning, right? Like that is just the thing, right? But yes, it's now just also so easy to recognize people who are very closed-minded and are just like, no, this is how it works, and you don't fucking understand, And then,
Well, and that's what's great about Bitcoin, because Bitcoin doesn't care about all these people. I mean, it's a calculator glued to a clock, and that's really all it is. It's just it's just an agnostic tool,
never stopping. Yeah, it
never stops, and so. That's the beauty of it. It doesn't care what any of these people think. They, everyone can have their own opinion and approach it from their own ways. And, I might use a hammer only to build houses, but, someone else might want to throw hammers and use it as a game for darts, like, throw it at the wall. That's okay. That's not how the hammer was invented. But again, it's a tool. And if that's how they want to use it, then fine.
Yeah. So who or what has been your most influential, like what has been most influential in shaping your views on all of this, like money, risk, wealth? Like, what was your thing?
So a few things, and to try to distill it into as short of a response as possible. So being in Hollywood and seeing the amount of money that people make in Hollywood and that we can make in Hollywood, but seeing how they still have just as many problems as anybody with trying to buy homes or provide for their family. and seeing how that translates into real estate, because everyone thinks they need to chase real estate even though they don't know a thing about real estate to earn money, and how they can't even qualify for a lot of these homes and things. Like, I started my mortgage business for all my friends in Hollywood, and it just grew into this thing. And now that's what it mostly specializes in, is just helping producers and directors and actors and everybody get into homes. So it's like, I see the broken money at the first level in Hollywood, and I see it again in them trying to get homes. And it's like, how can these well-to-do, privileged Western society people feel the broken money, yet, you know, the inflation here in America is nothing compared to the rest of the world. It's nothing. Mm-hmm. It you know, even though our true inflation is probably 15 to 20%, right? Not the distorted CPI. It's just enough that people feel it. And everyone in Hollywood feels good, where it's like, oh, they've worked on this movie and they've made, you know, whatever, X amount a week. And then the next movie, you know, 6 months later, they're making X plus 1 and X plus 2. And everyone wants to raise their quotes, right? And you see what the fees are. And yet they're not increasing. The goods that they have, the services they have are the same. So it's like, where's all that going? And
yeah.
I saw this early on without knowing I saw it. I saw it at the real estate level, where it's like, why can these people that are making $700,000 a year not afford a home? Like, what's broken there? What's going on? And so that led me into starting a finance strategy business where I consult these people. So, because as a mortgage broker, you look at all their finances, you see all their statements. And so I could see where all the money's buried. And so I would help coach them. But a lot of it was also them coming up with side hustles. And here's other ways to make money. Now do this, now do that. It's like, they're not specialized in all these other things. And now they're having to grind harder and longer hours just to maintain the wealth that they would have 2 or 3 years ago. So that's when I noticed it was broken. When I came to Bitcoin, I didn't see that as a replacement as money. I didn't see it as this egalitarian code. I didn't see it as a separation of state. I just saw it as a tech stock, like we all did, right? And like everybody else, I got into crypto and I was like, oh, look at all these other things, and look how cheap these are, and this thing's going to go up. And, you know, you start hearing things on CNBC. Oh, you need to diversify, right? Just pick 20 cryptos and throw money at it, and one of them's going to go up. And, you know, that was the narrative back then. But this was before people realized what it is. And, you know, we've all come to learn how important Bitcoin is. So,
but when you got
I feel
in
like
there,
I always saw it, but I didn't know I saw it.
So what was your aha moment? Like, when did you really see it?
I started to see it when...
Yeah.
So once I learned that all of the ICOs and quote unquote crypto were scams, because it's just the fiat world coming to an easier casino, right? Anyone can open the casino. Anyone can print as many tokens as they want. They could rug pull however they want. And when I started to see that it's like, you know, Ethereum had a 30% pre-mine and Sol had like a 70% pre-mine, like all these people just took all the tokens and made all they want. I thought, okay, they clearly are not here for any more altruistic reasons, which is what Bitcoin was saying. And Bitcoin was saying this without, of course, any executives or marketing department or CEO or terms of service or lawyers or anything. So it's like, just a thing, just a tool. And so once I saw that, it clicked for me that Bitcoin wasn't just some token to make money on. It was money itself. And that's why I titled my book Proof of Money. I feel like, Bram, our world has never, ever had money until Bitcoin. We've all had surrogates. We've all had a coupon for money. We've all had an attempt at money. We've all had something. Because we don't have money, we have to use gold or seashells or salt or this piece of paper. But now we finitely have it, because what is money supposed to be? It's like, well, one, it has to be a store of value. We know that. So if it has to be a store of value, well, that throws almost everything else out the window except maybe gold. But then how do I retain gold safely without people seeing it? How do I cut it up? How do I take it? It's like it's tethered to the ground. Like Bitcoin is the first money ever that isn't tethered to any flag or to any state or to any government. We know this, but until you start to look at the properties and realize, well, it's just code. It's like, that's all money should be. If money is just to secure your wealth, and take it forward in time and space for as long as you want through generations. It's like we used to think, oh, this is amazing. I could take $3,000 and I could send it from here to Japan. We thought, wow, that's amazing. Well, it would be amazing if you could send $3,000 300 years into the future, and it buy the same services and goods.
Well, and also if you send $3,000 to Japan, 2,500 arrives currently.
Well, exactly. Right? All the fees and all the intermediaries in between. Yeah, forget about that. And in Japan, like pick a third world country, right? And they're taking like 40% out. It's gone.
And so that store value, right? Like I also think, because when you talk about Bitcoin being money, which I agree with, but a lot of people then respond and say like it's slow and transaction throughput, yada yada yada. Would you agree that like the step one is people understanding its store value, i.e., you can store the value that you receive for your job or your venture, whatever, because you put value in your energy, that you can save that across time, which is into the future, and across space, which is take it anywhere in the world, or let your kids eventually take it anywhere in the world, right? Like, would you agree to that? Like that is step one.
Well, yes. So two answers to that. So any money, and throughout history this is true, nothing can become money until the people choose it. And the people won't choose it as money until it can store their value. If it can't store value, it's just a hot potato, right? Like some currencies are, like in Argentina or Turkey, it's just a hot potato. The minute they get it, boom, they got to get rid of it because it's not going to buy the same amount tomorrow.
Or they use it to light a fire.
Or they lose it to light a fire, keep warm. I mean, Weimar and, it's like your whole history. Yeah. But so yes, it has to, one, store value. But two, it is actually the fastest money we've ever had. Even if you look at our current fiat, our fiat is slower than Bitcoin. What people think is fast with credit cards and transfers is
the number
operating
changing,
on second and third layers. Yes, our second layer of Bitcoin, which your listeners know, the Lightning Network, is faster than anything we've ever had. It's the fastest monetary rails in the world.
To explain that, I think what you mean is like people can send each other money, whether it's in Europe or America or anywhere else, and I can send you $10 from here, from Europe to you, and then it goes -10 on my screen and it goes +10 on your screen.
That's right. There's no final settlement.
Yes, exactly. So, but that does not mean that the actual value that 10 units of dollars or euros should actually represent, that is also transferred, right?
That's right.
Conceptually, your bank actually has the 10 and my bank doesn't anymore. Right. Well, that's a whole different story whether they even have it, but let's keep with the concept, right? But with Bitcoin, when I send you, let's say 10 Bitcoin, you actually have the 10 Bitcoin and I do not have them anymore.
That's right.
You own them. You
right.
have them. Really, it's not just a number, you actually have them.
That's right. It's immutable, it's uneditable. No one can take it back. You can't call someone and say, I made a mistake, let me get it back. I have it. It's not just a credit instrument. That's the thing. Like, we're not used to having money systems that aren't credit. Like a dollar bill it's just a credit. That's just an IOU from the government. Bitcoin is, which is why it's classified.
But they said
as a commodity.
because the let's call it the digital money, when I think it was also digital when it was basically on a ledger 100 years ago at a bank, right? Like it's numbers, although it was represented or backed by gold in that sense. Do you think it's because it was backed by gold, let's say it was somewhat tangible still, right? Like, yes, okay, you can hold the bill, but the dollar bill, but it represented something, right? But when that didn't anymore, the bill was just a paper with a number on it.
That's right.
And most people, well, especially the millennial generation, only know that, right? But now when you can actually own the money, in the Bitcoin example, for example, that is already different. So that's weird.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's not physical, but it's digital, but through the technology, it is almost as if it's tangibly in your possession. That is even a bigger thing to, wrap your head around if you never even
Yes.
thought about that, right?
And that's the distinction between digital and virtual. Like, it's digital,
Correct.
but you can own the ones and zeros. Virtual is like, I don't really have it.
You
It's
own
just,
the number, you see a
that's right.
number which represents something.
That's right. And I'm glad that you brought up basically, what happened in 1971 when the dollar depegged from gold, because anyone born after 1971, all millennials, of course, don't realize that the dollars that they're. So here's the analogy I like to use. It's like, you drive your nice car to the club and you get a valet ticket. So prior to 1971, there was no valet ticket. You drop your car off and you have your car, and when you leave, you have your car. After 1971, you drop your car off, they give you the valet ticket. Here's a coupon for your car.
Yeah, and no car.
And they just drove the car away. And they said,
Yeah.
You know what? You don't need the car. This valet ticket is the same as a car. It'll take you everywhere. And so we started trading. It's like, okay, well, I have a car here. I want to trade it for a house. And then so on and so on. It's like, or it's like a coat check, right? You've turned your coat in, and I got this check, and I go back, and now the coat's gone. So now I'm just going to walk around with this coat check instead of a coat to keep me warm.
I actually love that, like the stupid, more stupid or more simplistic you make the examples, the more radical it actually sounds when people understand that it's actually connected to a real world thing, right? Like
Right.
this actually happened.
Right, we had gold for 5,000 years.
And
that
then
was
the president in America said, "Come, turn in your gold temporarily."
Yeah.
50 years ago until now, which it's not. Yeah.
And what he also said was, what he said, this is how he pulled the wool over everyone's eyes. He said, it's not the gold that you need to back the dollar. All this time, it's been the dollar to back the gold. So let's just get rid of the gold. The dollar's all you really needed. And ever since, there we've been, which is why we've lost, really written right on there, backed by gold. Now it just says backed by faith.
Yeah.
Faith. So.
Faith and hope is the strategy.
And hope. That's right.
So I think this is an interesting question because you're also in Hollywood, at least from the outside, money is a thing. People, the people in Hollywood influence the rest of the world also, culturally wise and society. How do you think our beliefs about money shape society? And from a Hollywood angle, I think that's maybe even a deeper question there. But what do you think?
I mean, from a Hollywood perspective, I think, it becomes a flex. It becomes a scorecard. It becomes a game. Because, it's like, if you look through monetary history, it's like we were never supposed to be wearing gold, for instance. We were, as like, hey, look who I am. Look at all this wealth I have. It was because they had to carry it through them, walking on the plains. There had to be a way for them to carry their wealth. And they actually wore their necklaces underneath their clothing. You didn't want to show it off.
Mm-hmm.
That was a risk. But, cut to today with broken money, and it's like, well, you can only store your money in so many places, and gold has been the leading money for a long time. And this is a way where once you've reached a certain level and you don't need any more, well, you can start to show it off. It's excess. And so in movies and Hollywood and narratives, it's like, yeah, hey, here's the fancy car, right? Here's the big house, right? Look at Iron Man. Here's all my money. Here's all the things I can do with my money, and I can throw it away. I
see videos of people in clubs in America pouring their $1,000 champagne bottles or something like this.
Exactly, yeah. Wolf of Wall Street and all these movies. And so, I mean, there's an excess that is portrayed, but I also think, it's portrayed partially for escapism because most people don't have that kind of money, so it's fun for them to imagine for a moment, wow, what would it be like to have so much money that I can just dispose of it like that? And on the other hand, it makes them think, oh, I need to grind. I need to work harder. I need to have more side hustles. And I don't think that that's necessarily true for everybody because that's where the broken money as a first principle problem causes all these other problems. Because, okay, if you need to have a side hustle and grind harder, Bram, you're not going to have your kid. You're not going to start your family. So now you're not going to have a family. Now you're not going to choose the right choices maybe for your food, because you need to get food fast and quick because you're working so hard, you're not sleeping as much, you're going for comfort food, fast food. This affects your health, this affects your future. So it sort of leaks into everything. I don't know that Hollywood shows that. What they show is they show lots of money, and then they show all this wellness. Well, then you need all this wellness. You need to be doing yoga and drinking this green shake and doing all this. So that's their solution to a problem that could be fixed at the top end if we were teaching and demonstrating hard money and responsible saving and sovereignty. There isn't a lot of sovereignty that's taught in Hollywood, although some of the principles are there in the background. You know, every now and then there's movies like The Matrix or, where it's like, look, you need to wake up to what's happening to centralized corporations, to the government, to just being aware.
Now,
did that answer your question? That was kind of all
I think so. But I also think, like, I was thinking when you answered this question, I almost want to say, like, but does that broken money then also kind of like devaluate value? I almost want to say, right? So when you mentioned, like, oh, people think I should have a side hustle, or I should make as much money as possible, and then I have to get more amounts of these money units, basically, right? But is that then actually what you want to do? Is that your added value in the world, right? Or do you then miss the value of creating a family, or like whatever?
No,
right?
That's it exactly. But I think people, unless they step back and
like what is really valuable in life, perhaps.
That's right. And I think many people do reach that level of wisdom, but it takes a while. We're all ingrained, we're all taught, and because it's a game and a scorecard, to make more money. It's like, oh, you want to make more money? I want to make more money than him. It's like, what's he doing? How's he making so much money? How's it that he has a house already?
So is that like concept of money then like inherently linked to inequality also in a sense? Or, well, maybe not just inequality, but like, this person has that and then I'm better or worse, or...
I'm not sure I know how to answer that. It's like, on one hand, everybody, it's like, I always believe in equal opportunity, but not equal outcome, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anyone that really does want to make more money, quote unquote, can make more money. But yes, you could be sacrificing other things that are more important. It's with Bitcoin, it's like it becomes more than the money, because it's the money, but it's also the ownership. It compresses all of your value, monetary or not, in the past to take forward into the future, which can't be said about anything else.
Yeah, and so when you believe in what you said, equality of opportunity, not outcome, do you think then capitalism is the most ethical economic system?
Well, that's a very loaded question. I mean,
I know.
On one hand, I'm totally capitalist. I mean, look, I went to business school. I've bought, I've run businesses. I've sold businesses. I build businesses. I love business, but I also love to work hard, and I know how to make money. But for the people that don't, so for that, in a sense, that's my vocation. It's for the people that aren't. It's like for the podiatrist or the painter or the baker, or the plumber. It's like for the people that they have their trade, called a trade because you're supposed to be able to trade your excess contribution for someone else's. That's why it's called a trade. So it's like those people shouldn't have to become a broker and become an accountant and become an economist to do these other things. So in that sense, I mean, is capitalism bad? I don't know that it's bad, but...
No, I didn't say bad. Like, is this the most ethical? Like,
yeah,
because
I don't...
What I think, like, the equality of opportunity that I agree with, I do think that capitalism, in the most simplistic way I could explain it, is even when you're a carpenter or a painter or whatever, right? Like, if we bake breads or cakes, and my cakes are better than yours, so people like mine more, I'm better at baking cakes, then maybe you should not be baking cakes.
No, in that part,
right?
I believe in, and that comes with Bitcoin too. Like in a sense, Bitcoin is very capitalistic in that everyone's going to get it at the price they deserve, right? Like how much work are you willing to do to learn about it, to secure as much as possible at the right time? Or are you going to wait until the BlackRock ETF comes in and the other 17 trillion of assets under management, and now you're going to buy it at 250,000? And by the way, that's okay. You can buy it at 250,000 and ride it up to 5 million. But also, if you do the work, you might understand it and get in a little bit earlier.
Yeah. So do you see Bitcoin as just a technology, as you mentioned, or also like a philosophy in that sense, also tied to what you just said?
I mean, I see it quite literally as a technology, as code. But I see it becomes philosophical because it's code, because we have never known anything in our life ever to have anything that wasn't controlled by someone or by some state, that there wasn't some leader somewhere. We've never ever had that ever, and that we can own, meaning, you can't own anything if you can't defend it. Which is why my argument is that we've never owned anything before Bitcoin, because you can't defend anything else. It's like, even like my house right here, which I own, and I pay the mortgage and I pay all this, but why am I paying property taxes? I'm not selling it, but I'm paying all this money in property. Like, so they can take it. They can put a lien on it. I can be
if
involved.
If you don't pay it, yeah.
If
so
I don't
they
pay
said
it,
this is a thing and you need to pay it. If you don't, we can take it.
That's right. And they can take it anyways, with eminent domain. If the airport decides to expand or the beach expands, and they can knock, where I used to live before here, I was literally on the 0-yard line of the LAX airport. Like, all of the homes had been knocked down up to my street. I walk out my front door, I look straight at the airport. That was it. And mine was the next street to go, and I saw the writing on the wall, so I got out of there. Now, it's still there, but it's like they can just take it, and they'll take it at the price that they set. And that's law. They're allowed to do that. And that's right here in America, right in Los Angeles.
So
I see it both, as a technology
No, so
and philosophical.
But when does it really turn philosophical? Because I think what I like also about this example, and I hear a lot of people say that, but there's also people who have a rebuttal and that say like, yeah, but a house is really an ownership and a government couldn't really do that. But it's not necessarily about if they could, or like if they would, but the fact that they could is more the argument also here.
Correct.
Right? So the fact that you think that you spend your money on a house, or you have an agreement with a bank and a mortgage, etc., that because you signed the paper somewhere, that it's actually yours because I don't know what the English word is, but like at the municipality there's a number, lot, blah blah, so and so. So and so is the property of Terence Michael, but that doesn't exclude the possibility of a local ruler or a federal ruler in your case to decide whether or not that house should still exist, right? Just because that opportunity is there, that's where the argument comes from. Right, of owning a house is not really property, etc.
That's right.
And I think a lot of people don't want to understand that, right? They think, oh, that would never happen. But I think the philosophical part here is, or also the psychological part is that, just because you wouldn't do that doesn't mean that it's possible. And that's like the core of this argument here, right? That you are not a sovereign person in that sense.
Exactly. And that's why it's philosophical, because people get stuck in their little communities with their own rules and regulations and forget how the rest of the world live, how the global south is. And it's like so many places in the world, the majority of the world, 80% of the world, they aren't unbanked. They are disenfranchised. They are censored. Their money, their activity is surveilled. They can't cross borders with wealth. It'll be stolen from them. Women can't, be educated. There's so many broken things because of broken money that Bitcoin solves, because it's like, how else do you have a money that is free from all these people that could literally just be, 12 words in your head? And so the philosophy is, wow, for the first time, I can store all of my wealth, everything that I've done. So I've painted a house today, and I was paid $500 to paint that house. Well, I only need $300. My burn so my earn is $500 for the day. My burn is $300. That $300 represents, proportionately the food I need to eat that day, the lights, the electricity, my gas, whatever. But there's $200 extra. So that $200 extra, I need to store somewhere, right? And so everyone's like, oh, I'll just throw it in a savings account, whatever. But philosophically, what if that just stays with you? You know the value you provided. Yeah. What if you could just hang on to that? You
actually keep it, right?
You actually keep it, and as long as you need to keep it, and then you spend that for the 20 sandwiches that you need later when you need it, but you always know that's worth 20 sandwiches. Without the ability to store that, the next day, I'm not going to paint as efficiently or as fast I did for that 500 because my burn is only 300. So I'm going to paint just slower. I'm going to only paint half the side of the barn and get my $300. Why save it? Because that's going to dissipate. That 200 extra contribution is going to be, 100 next year.
Yeah, it's actually a perverse incentive, right? Like
exactly.
It's a burden almost. And when you can actually save it through time and space, and I really love this thought, like if you know that you can actually do that, maybe you would still get paid 500, but you would even do a way better job because you value the job that you do, whatever your job is, way more because you understand that what you put in and that what you get, that what you get rewarded for what you put in, you can actually own forever. Basically,
that's right.
So I think that's a good incentive in that sense, right? Because then everything will be better, hopefully, more quality.
Well, yeah, and then you are incentivized to create rather than consume, or at least consume needlessly. To save rather than spend, to plan rather than gamble. Like inflationary money causes you to gamble and spend and consume because it's not going to be worth anything. You have to get rid of it.
Yeah. And so is this also what you think could contribute then to, or what Bitcoin can contribute to, like personal and financial freedom? Is that this example?
That's it. Like in the most simplistic terms, because there's so much that can be said about Bitcoin. In the most simplistic terms, it stores wealth with finite, contained energy. There's no leakage. There's no loss. It's a battery that doesn't drain. And even though everyone can intellectually say, oh, yeah, I get that. That's cool. It's like, but think about what all that does. You don't realize all the decisions that you are making every day against that. Like,
Yeah, the tech is only a little part, actually.
I mean, how many people have said, oh, I don't want to have kids yet because I don't make enough money yet. Or, let's not get married yet. I don't have money. Or I can't do this because and it's like, that's why you're constantly chasing more money. It's like if you add up all of the energy that you spent and all the things that you did, think about if there wasn't inflation, what your net worth would be today versus how hard you worked and all the stuff you bought. Like if you were to write it down on paper, it's pretty shocking and it's kind of scary how
and
much
also
value
the value
you actually
of
put
that,
out.
right? So you spend it on whatever bullshit stuff or just another sneaker or whatever, but that also took away some value of what you could have had, right?
Right.
So perhaps after 10 years, let's say, take a time frame of 10 years, you could have started a family.
That's right.
Bought a house or whatever, right? So it also, actually by like spending it now, you're also diluting yourself in the future.
That's right.
Because you don't have the vehicle to actually, until Bitcoin, obviously, but you didn't have the vehicle to actually, get there even. There was no incentive.
No, I mean, how many times have you or so many people, you jump on Amazon, you buy something for 20, 30, 40 bucks. Yeah, this is kind of this weird, cheap China. It's not right. And you just toss it because it's almost not even worth returning, or you kind of use it. And you just constantly are doing that. It's because that 20, 30, 40 bucks just doesn't mean what it used to. But now.
But also because we don't understand, right? Like I have 20 pairs of shoes, so I totally get what you're saying.
No.
But it's also because you don't understand. Well, before I didn't understand. Now I try to live way more frugal in that sense. But because you just don't understand.
Well,
think
and
that's
because you're
the
denominating in your fiat, in your political currency, if you redenominate in Bitcoin, you're going to stop buying so many sneakers,
yes.
because that pair of sneakers that you paid $250 for is suddenly going to be worth $1,000
Yes.
in
My
2.5
story
years.
is I bought headphones, not these, because the headphones I bought are broken before, but I bought headphones with Bitcoin, and those turned out to be $7,000 headphones. And they're already
Yeah,
broken. I don't even have them
exactly.
anymore. Um,
Yeah,
but
well,
yeah,
I mean,
no,
there's so many stories of those people that have bought a house that's now worth $240 million. It's just like because they got into Bitcoin when it was, $7.
yeah.
But you've been in for 10 years, did you say? No.
Yeah, but up and down, up and down. So
Okay,
I
wow,
bought
but that's
for
impressive.
that I'm still here. Yeah, maybe.
Well, yeah, for sure. But wow, I don't know if I've met anyone that's been in that long yet.
Well, I bought for 300-ish, but I sold at 4,000, so I felt great.
Wow.
And
Oh, so
then,
you sold to me. You sold to me because that's
well,
when I was
probably,
buying.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then later, well, I got back in, of course, and like, yeah, over the past 10 years, I did like really experience all the down markets as well. So that's
Wow. Good
also
for
why
you.
I'm still really excited to see it go up. Like, I think my heart is ice cold because I went so much
Yes.
down, but it's also pretty cold when we go up, right? Like, I don't.
Yes.
For me, it's now almost like a game. And I said this in other podcasts as well. Like, I once read a tweet of I don't know who, but of a guy who said, like, if you even remotely think Bitcoin is going to be a thing, do you want a seat in the stadium when it happens or not? And then I
I
thought,
like that.
yes, that's what I want, because I see it. Like, I know I put in the work in 10 years. Yeah, thousands of hours. I don't know, the 15, 20,000 hours. I don't know. So
Yeah.
I just think, yeah, this is it, right? Like so many of us. And now when it happens, I want to have that seat in the stadium. That's why I'm here, and that's also why I'm trying to do this and starting this, and then we'll see. And for me, after this time, like, the number for me is just 100,000. Like, when it hits 100,000, I know it'll be a million, and I know it'll be 10
Yeah.
million, and I know it'll
That's
be
right.
everything, because the thesis is still, it's everything or nothing. And,
That's
and
right.
for me, the 100,000 is my indicator of that it will actually, suck up all the value that is there. Because, as you said as well,
Yep.
like, once you understand, like, what are you going to sell your stuff for, or why would you buy something else than Bitcoin, right?
That's right.
If once you truly understand, and that's why what they mean with it's sucking up all the value is people who
Right.
have gold or diamonds who are not that are diluting because of the fake diamonds, so gold, diamonds, houses, all these other things are eventually inferior to Bitcoin. And once
That's right.
enough, and that's why we talk about adoption. Once enough people actually understand that, people will save in Bitcoin. Like, that is
Yeah.
just.
And then
I
there's
think, yeah,
the secondary effect, of helping the planet because all this extra junk that we're buying that's being made and going into storage and being thrown up into
yeah,
landfills and deteriorating and becoming methane and it's
zero value. It has no added value in the world, I think. So, but
right.
yeah, it also, I love that. I hope that people understand that, like what you said, like, people are buying stupid shit. You think you need this stuff, or that you, like, in some way, subconsciously, you are driven to spend your money, which absolutely makes no sense. Well,
Well, that's
sometimes it
the
makes sense when you need a house or thing, but, like,
right.
for anyone listening, look around, look at the stupid stuff you have, and think about why you bought that, right? Like,
And
why
that's
why
what
do
the
you have that?
government wants. They don't want you to save. They don't want you to invest. They say they want you to, but they don't. And it's partially why CBDCs are so scary because when CBDCs come out, they're going to make you spend. Those things are going to expire. And that's something that most people are not familiar with is expirable money.
That will make you anxious even
Yes.
more, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's end on a higher note.
Okay.
I asked this to everyone
Yes.
at the end. This last question: What's a core belief you will never let go?
Uh, that the issue with all of the ills and everything broken in society and in money and anywhere is human action. And as sad as that is, it's like once you remove humans, you can have a pure, trustless form of whatever it is. In this case, we're comparing it to Bitcoin and money. But who would have thought that this whole time that was the solution to money, was simply to remove people?
Yeah, wild, huh? I love that.
That's what, yeah.
Yeah.
And
like
so
we cannot trust ourselves is actually what you're saying.
That's right, which is why it was always planned. Satoshi was always going to vanish. He was always going to disappear because he knew he had to. You cannot have a face. Yeah. Yeah,
that's actually amazing, huh? It's amazing he stepped away. Like, what a person. I think it's Hal Finney, so I think he's probably dead. But if he's still alive, yes. It must be amazing to see, like, what a enlightened person that has to be, right? Like, if he or she or they would be alive and they watch it from a distance and they see what they did, that must feel incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. But I agree. I don't think they're with us anymore, which is good, which is a good thing.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for this conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Thank you, Brown.
Where can people follow you? Find your book. I'll obviously link to it.
Just at Proof of Money on Twitter. I'm there every day, and from there they can find my book. It's in every format: hardback, paper, audio, ebook. And
you can listen to it for free, right? On the Kindle.
Yeah, if anyone that has an Audible account, it's there. Yep. 21 chapters, 20 minutes each. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again, and let's stay in touch.
Okay. Thanks, Bram.
Cool, man. Cheers. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, it would be amazing if you could rate, review, and subscribe on the podcast platform of your choice. It will help us educate more millennials on the importance of Bitcoin. You can follow and connect with me on Twitter. I'm Bramk, that's @BRAMK. And if you are or know someone who has an interesting perspective on Bitcoin that's worth sharing, hit me up. I read and reply to every single message. I appreciate your support and hope you'll be here for the next episode. Thanks for listening. Bye.